You can't let conflict get out of control. Hey, I am Chuck the bureaucrat, and you might remember that Lieutenant Colonel Schultz has been helping Beth by playing the role of the knight. Beth, of course, is a former brigade commander who's nowadays a government civilian who quietly blends into the little old ladies in tennis shoes. She's very well connected, and she gets business done in a friendly way, even when she's running people over with a tank. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Colonel Schultz is new to the Pentagon from an operational assignment where blunt force and aggression were usually necessary to get the mission accomplished. It turns out that these two work really well together because Lieutenant Colonel Schultz's attack dog approach encourages people to deal with Beth. And in a lot of cases, Beth gets exactly what she wants because it's a compromise solution to what Lieutenant Colonel Schultz proposed. But there was a little incident last week, so Beth grabbed Lieutenant Colonel Schultz so they could chat. She says, "Hey, I want to thank you for stepping up last week. I think you really surprised some folks with what you said." Schultz kind of looks embarrassed and says, "I'm glad you feel that way, because after the meeting, some people came and talked to me that I might have gone a little too far." Now, Beth knows exactly how that word got back to Lieutenant Colonel Schultz because she told those people to go talk to him. But instead, she says, you got to present a credible threat of violence in order to be taken seriously around here. And then she says, "I just think that since you've been doing so well, it's time to take things to the next level." Lieutenant Colonel Schultz is a little surprised how this conversation is going, and he's like, "Okay, all right, well, what I've been having you do is escalate the tension in meetings. And then I've got this little system I use to be able to detect when that escalation has gone too far and then back it off to get to where we need to be." Schultz says, "Yeah, I kind of get that feeling." Well, there's basically 5 steps in the escalation process. First, light, even friendly tactics give way to heavy-handed moves. And then the number of issues in conflict starts to increase. Then focus shifts away from specifics towards more global, all-encompassing concerns. At that point, the motivation starts to shift away from doing well for our side and to just hurting the other side. And then, finally, the number of parties involved in the conflict increases. And now Lieutenant Colonel Schultz is like, "Oh, I started dragging in all those other issues." Beth nods and says, "Yeah, you put us right on the brink of them just wanting to hurt us. What should I have done?" And Beth says, "I usually think of this as a game that goes back and forth. Each side takes turns determining how far up the scale we move. And the rule of thumb is that when it's your turn to act, you can either keep the tension where it is, or you can move it 1 notch higher." Lieutenant Colonel Schultz interrupts and says, "Or bring it down a notch." Beth shakes her head and frowns. That's the thing about de-escalation. It's not as easy as escalation is. You can't upset everyone and then just calm them right back down. That's why your role is so important. You want to deliver surgical attacks at the right time with the least amount of escalation necessary." Schultz goes, Beth goes on, "So here's the other thing. Since escalation usually occurs 1 step at a time and you're taking turns deciding what level of tension the meeting is at, I like to keep the tension 1 notch below what I'm willing to tolerate. Let's say I want to keep the meeting focused on a specific issue, and so I don't want the number of issues to increase. In that case, I'm going to stay light and friendly no matter what. They can take heavier moves if they want to, but I'm not going to take the bait. But then, if I'm perfectly happy for a meeting to collapse into chaos, I might keep bringing up new issues from all over the spectrum." Schultz is looking at Beth differently, but he just says, But Beth is in the zone, so she goes on, "That's right. And when they let things escalate, I always ask myself, why? Why are they trying to escalate? Do they have a reason? Do they just lack self-control? Or did I hit a nerve that makes them feel that I've escalated the tension. Schultz thinks this is the part where she's going to tell him exactly how he screwed up. So he says, "So what should I do?" Beth says, "Listen, as long as you're with me, you're doing fine. But if you're on your own or with Joe, you might want to be more of a voice of reason. And just remember the most important thing. Never escalate so far that General Foster gets dragged in. And if somebody else suggests that they're going to start bringing in generals because things are getting out of hand, do this."